So, if you're an EB-5 investor from China or India, you've definitely heard the word retrogression. It's this major hurdle that can feel pretty overwhelming. But don't worry. Today, we're going to break down what this visa backlog is all about, and more importantly, show you exactly how to navigate it. All right, let's jump right in. Here's our game plan. We'll start with the big picture, the green card dream. Then we'll get into the weeds on the retrogression roadblock, see how it's hitting Chinese and Indian investors specifically, and then, this is a good part, we'll explore how you can actually get around that backlog. We'll wrap up with the key takeaways you need to remember. Okay, first things first, let's set the stage. Why is the EB-5 program such a big deal in the first place? Well, it all comes down to that dream of living in the US and all the incredible opportunities that come with it. I'm willing to bet that for you, the answer is a huge yes. I mean, that's why you're here, right? Getting permanent residency in the US is absolutely life-changing. It opens up a whole new world for you and your family, both personally and professionally. And for a really long time, the EB-5 program has been seen as this golden ticket to that green card. The idea is pretty simple. You invest in the U.S. economy, your investment creates jobs, and in return, you and your family can get on the path to permanent residency. But that once clear path has hit a massive traffic jam. So now let's talk about that traffic jam. We need to get a handle on this concept everyone talks about, retrogression. You know, the easiest way to think about it really is like a traffic jam on the highway. It's what happens when way too many people from one country apply for an EB-5 visa and they just run out of the number of visas legally available for that country each year. The line just stops. And the number that causes this entire jam, it's 7%. You see, under US law, no single country can get more than 7% of the total EB-5 visas in a year. So when a country with huge demand like China or India hits that hard cap, a backlog forms instantly. So you can see this isn't random. It's basically a perfect storm. You've got massive demand from China and India, slamming up against that strict 7% country limit, and then you throw in the fact that there are only about 10,000 of these visas a year. And, this is a big one, your spouse and kids each count as one visa. The math just doesn't work, and you end up with these incredibly long waits. So what does this roadblock actually mean for you? Let's get specific and look at how this is playing out for investors from China and India, because it's a little different for each. This timeline really tells the story. Chinese investors were the first to hit this wall way back in 2015. Then, just 4 years later, a huge surge in demand meant Indian investors were in the exact same boat. But here's the light at the end of the tunnel. In 2022, the EB-5 Reform and Integrity Act completely changed the game, and that's where the new opportunities come in. And this is where it gets really interesting because we're talking about two very different situations. For investors from China, the backlog is so old and so big that they could be looking at waits of over a decade. But for Indian investors, the backlog is newer, but it is growing incredibly fast. That means acting quickly and strategically is absolutely essential to get a good spot in line. You know, beyond the frustration of waiting, there's a very real, very personal risk here. During these long delays, an investor's child can turn 21. They age out, and that could mean they lose their chance to get a green card with the rest of the family. It is, without a doubt, one of the most stressful parts of this whole process. Okay, so that's the problem, but how do you get around it? This is where we shift from problem to solution. Because the good news is, recent changes have created what you can think of as strategic express lanes. This chart right here, this is the key to your entire strategy. Thanks to that new law, a big chunk of the yearly visas are now set aside or reserved. Look at this, 20% are just for rural projects. Another 10% are for high unemployment areas. These categories have their own separate, much shorter lines. This is your way to bypass the main traffic jam. Okay, so here's your playbook. Step 1, and this is the big one, target those reserved categories. That's how you bypass the main queue. Step 2, file as early as you possibly can. This locks in your priority date, which is basically your official spot in line. The earlier the better. Step 3, if you're already in the US, make sure you maintain your legal status, like on an H-1B or F-1 visa. And finally, number 4, plan for your kids. Work with a good immigration lawyer to use every tool available to protect them from aging out. Now, I really want to zoom in on what is probably the most powerful strategy on the table right now, investing in a rural project. Why is this such a game changer? Because it gives you a killer 2-for-1 advantage. Not only do you get access to that huge 20% reserved visa pool, but USCIS also gives these applications priority processing. That combo can shave years off your wait time.
All right, let's bring it all home. We're going to summarize the key points you need to know to turn this giant obstacle into a real, manageable opportunity.
Think of this table as your final action plan. First, know your priority date and watch the monthly visa bulletin like a hawk. It tells you when it's your turn. Second, choose those reserved projects. It is the most direct way to skip the line. Third, be prepared financially for your investment to be tied up for a while. And finally, please work with trusted professionals. This is not a DIY project. And if you're a visual person, it really is this simple. You've got a choice. You can get in that super long, slow-moving line for unreserved visas, or you can choose one of these much shorter, faster-moving express lanes for reserved projects. The right choice here is pretty clear, isn't it? And one last thing. You can't just set it and forget it. This is a moving target. U.S. immigration policy is always changing, and those updates can have a direct impact on your case. Staying informed isn't just a good idea, it is absolutely critical to your success. So what's the bottom line here? It's this. Retrogression is not a dead end. It's a challenge for sure, but it is a manageable one. If you understand the rules and you strategically use these new set-aside categories, you can absolutely transform this roadblock into just another step on your path to achieving your American dream.